Thank you for joining us today's sessions Beyond the Premium, Real Talk on Risk, Coverage, and Value. My name is Rasha Palau. I am the Associate Executive Director with the Asian Pacific American Chamber of Commerce, or APAC. If you're new to APAC, we are business-focused, nonprofit, and non-political organization that connects entrepreneurs, small business owners, professionals, and corporate partners across industries. Our work is rooted in removing barriers, fostering relationships, and supporting long-term business growth. Today's webinar is a part of our Small Business Action Committee programming. It's a key initiative focused on providing timely and practical education to help small businesses thrive. This morning, we are talking about insurance, a topic that every businesses deals with, but very few understand. Our experts will unpack how today's market has evolved, what business owners should watch for, and how to make smarter and confidence-covered decisions. I am excited to introduce Sam Lee, our chair of Small Business Action Committees. So Sam brings a global perspective to his work as a business immigration attorney and is passionate about helping individuals and companies navigate complex systems. Through his leadership as SBAC chair, he continues to champion small businesses across Michigan. So please join me in welcoming Sam.
Thank you, Rishabha. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar. The Small Business Action Committee's mission is to help business owners access practical resources that strengthen and protect their businesses. And few topics are more important than understanding your commercial insurance. It's something that every owner needs, yet too often we think about it only when it's too late, or realize too late that it's not just about the premium. We're fortunate to have Lynn Sterla and Scott Hinman with us today. Together, they've helped countless Michigan businesses navigate the complex world of insurance. This session will break down what you really need to know to safeguard your business and make informed, confident decisions. With that, please join me in welcoming Lynn and Scott.
I appreciate that, and thank you for having me. I am an agency owner with Michigan Farm Bureau Insurance, and I specialize in personal, life, health, and commercial, which brings our topic today. And to tell you a little bit about Michigan Farm Bureau Insurance, the company is over 100 years old, and we only insure businesses and families in Michigan. So the company has a unique perspective on the landscape, the economy, the risks and special needs of Michigan business owners. So it allows us to have a unique tailored approach when we're putting together your policies. And with me today is Scott Hinman. Scott is a commercial specialist in our corporate office, and he is a resource for the agents. He helps collaborate and put together policies if we need assistance, answer any questions we have, and just provide his expertise. So I will introduce you real quick to Scott.
Thanks so much, Lynn. As a field representative of Michigan Farm Bureau, I get the pleasure of working with agents all across the state, including Lynn, and in service to their commercial clients. And this ranges from things like premium audit support, business income exposures, aligning coverage to unique business operations, and assisting with the professional development of the agents in the ever-changing commercial insurance space, because we all have to be able to develop along with the changes that are coming right now and will never, ever stop.
Basically, we're talking about risks and exposures and how that's changed in the landscape today. So think about 10 years ago, when small business owners are thinking about risks to their business, it's probably something that would have to do with a storm damage to their building or something like that. In the past 10 years, alone, we've come across pandemics, cybersecurity issues, the explosion of AI, climate change. All these different things have impacted the business owners. I mean, think about a restaurant owner during COVID. Suddenly now they have to put on a different hat and they're a delivery company, and there's different exposures that occur with that. So there's been a lot of changes, and the one size fits all policy isn't going to cut it anymore. Insureds need to have tailored plans, and they need to be actively engaged in questioning their insurance agents to get that for themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lynn. The gamut of what needed to change, like you said it best, the restaurant owner who needed to offer delivery for the first time ever. The transportation network companies really exploded in that space, and there gave opportunities for individuals who weren't able to work the ability to do so and continue to earn for their family. But if we think a little bit on the more macro scale of the larger employers, not just the smaller business unit restaurant, 5 to 25 employees, but what about the manufacturer who had to open up a third shift to keep maintain social distancing and still be able to produce what they needed to produce to keep the world economy going? Supply chain issues, construction costs, labor costs all have catapulted and been increasing exponentially over the last 5 years alone. And the advent of artificial intelligence is only throwing into stark contrast, or sharp relief rather, the need for the human to stay in the loop. And that is so critical to be able to maintain stability as a business, to be able to support our employees, because as we live, work, and play in this state, if one thing falls, what falls next? So yeah, the insurance component, super important for business owners to take a bigger look at, right? Not just from the first page that shows the premium. When we talk about building coverage, if you're a building owner, if you rent out space, either as an apartment operator or as a building owner for tenants that are business owners, you have a lot of unique exposures. And Lynn you said it best, not one size fits all. And the price on the policy doesn't always equate to the value of the coverage within, right?
And that brings us to the next topic. We kind of talked about it a little bit, cost. When a lot of insureds are calling for the first time, oftentimes they will want to send me over their coverage information and say, hey, can you beat this price? The cost of the policy, the premium, is not the true cost of the business. You can get a good deal potentially with a carrier, but the main thing you want to look at is your long-term costs. If you set everything up properly, you manage your risks, you're in contact with your agent, that pays off in the long run. That can keep your business running versus just this amount of money you have to pay every year. One false move, and what was business interruption, for example. If that's not on your policy and something happens to your business, how do you keep paying your employees? How do you keep going? A lot of businesses that didn't think these things through are now realizing that it costs more than just that premium. It costs, potentially you could lose everything. And I hate to sound so devastating, but that's the truth of it. I'm sure, Scott, you see a lot of that when you're talking with agents.
Yeah, it's the oh boy factor of when a client calls in and says, I've got water in coming through my roof. This is an interesting topic. Actually, as we were talking before and preparing for this, we were thinking of some additional claims examples. And we actually had a conversation at home office the other day about what's a drain. And chat in, if you would, what do you consider a drain, either in your house or your business or where you work? What do you consider to be a drain? And
Nobody
Sam,
saw that question coming today.
yeah, no. Kitchen sink, that's perfect. Yep, kitchen sink is a great example. If anybody's ever had water in their basement from the sump pump well, right? That's a drain. It goes out, it sends water out, right? A toilet drains, a shower drains. What about on top of your roof? If you have a home, you have gutters, typically, on the edge of your roof pans or roof to direct the water away from the building, because water and buildings don't often mix. We try to prevent the water from coming in as much as possible. But if you have a commercial building with a flat roof, do you have gutters? No. You have roof drains. Water backup of drains, sewers, and sumps, those roof drains that can get clogged with just leaves, if they are overflowing and water is building up on top of the roof, how much weight can that roof contain before it all comes crashing down into the building? That's water backup. We usually think about it in the space of homeowners with, oh my gosh, I've got a couple inches of water and my couch and my Christmas and my holiday decorations and my kids' memories are all wet and destroyed. If you're like me, there's a bunch of old unused golf clubs gathering dust right now. But when you're a business owner, the cost of stopping work to have to deal with that is an additional cost on top of the cost to actually fix the problem. And that's the business interruption component. So if you're the building owner, or if you work in a place where you can't operate your business out of that building that suffered that loss, how are you paying your employees? How are you paying your utilities that need to continue? How are you, if you're not making any revenue? You might have net 30, net 60, net 90 payment terms on certain things. You might have lines of credit. You might have mortgages, your rent alone, property taxes. So those are things that when on the first pages of the policy, they're not really highlighted a lot. What do we see on the first pages? We see $1 million worth of liability coverage. We see the building limits and we see the total policy price for the year. And that's really where a lot of folks tend to stop, because that's really how we've kind of been trained to do as consumers, is to look at the overall price of the policy and assign a value to it based on what we see. If you buy from an apron wearing lady on TV or a lizard on TV or a talking head on a webinar, you're buying from whom you choose. And that's ultimately, again, your choice. But what value do you assign to that? Are you buying because you believe it to be a value, or are you willing to take a chance on going a little bit outside of your comfort zone and taking a deeper dive with someone who truly understands the risk that your unique business presents?
I have a question.
Sure.
So when interacting with the agent, and I think that's a good point about what I need, what I sign up for. Do you recommend people who kind of like the agent come to my property to see my business entity and to narrow down what needs that are like specific to my business?
I can take that one. So definitely, we'd love to come out, see everything, advise, take pictures, and we also go through what's called a business exploration. There's a form with a bunch of different questions that covers every aspect of your business. And people that aren't used to it may think, boy, this is cumbersome, but it's necessary because it helps craft the different areas that we're building of coverage for you. So definitely it's good to get the agent out, engage, and don't be afraid to ask those questions.
Yeah, that's I appreciate you brought up that resource that we have, Lynn, because in the insurance world and in any other business, if you're trying to align yourself with somebody, you have to find out about them. We have these, we've created unique resources for our agents to utilize across all sorts of different industries, from manufacturing to automobile repair services, golf courses, breweries and wineries. And so being able to go out and see what exactly the operation is, as unique as it is in that special industry, that's life-changing. And I have never, I've been in the insurance industry for going on 21 years now. Never at a carrier more have I had agents coming to me saying, boy, my clients are really asking me, you ask a lot of questions. Do you really need to know all that? And the answer is yes. We take a slightly different approach than a lot of agents do and a lot of companies do, because we assign a value to our client as, you're our job. This is what we do. Our mission statement is 11 words long at Farm Bureau: protecting the people of Michigan from the risks of everyday life. That's it. That there is nothing else we do other than trying to end childhood hunger in Michigan, which is our social mission. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. But yeah, Sam, when agents are able to engage with the clients and clients are willing to, again, step out of that comfort zone, a lot of great things can happen.
Next, we touched on this also earlier a little bit about AI. AI is a great tool. It's exploded. There's people constantly trying to implement different aspects of it into their business. And it's phenomenal on one end. And it's also, it can be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Damaging on another end, because the output is only as good as the input in the questions that you ask. So what I would say about the digital age is that, words absolutely matter. And you really, while you can look up a topic, you should get input from your insurance agent about that as well. Because, I've had just in my life looked up things and thought that it was correct, but the input that comes out can be wrong at certain times. And again, that can cost you a lot. So I can't think of a specific example. Scott, do you have any with that?
Yeah, the social, not so much on the AI because I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If you don't know how to ask the right question, you're not going to get a great answer. And asking about, I don't go online. Well, we've all gone online. I have a fever and I'm achy. Great. Somebody thinks I'm dying of mesothelioma. That's fantastic. I don't think that's the case. But I try not to step out of my lane. I don't call my dentist up and say, hey, doc, my tooth hurts. What's wrong with me? He asked me to come in, right? So he can take a look. And there's a lot of bad advice given when folks engage online with one another, because we're always looking as humans for the quick answer, because we're leading very busy lives. We need to be able to move on. But sometimes that leads down a rabbit hole that is fraught with misinformation or disinformation. If you've heard of the information age of a couple centuries ago, well, now we're kind of living in the misinformation age, or I'm missing information that is relevant to me. We in the industry also use various parts or types of AI tools and resources, but we do so with caution, because we still have to verify and validate the output based on the input. And my biggest pet peeve is the social media. Folks who say that they've had a bad experience with something often are experiencing something that is a creation of their own. A great example is somebody who says, my car wasn't covered by my insurance company. You do have choices on how to structure your policy. And that's where I say pet peeve, because, well, it's an edge. I don't like to see people not getting what they want out of something, but also I really wish that everybody had the opportunity and wherewithal to spend the time, because not everybody has the time. And tools are great, but they're only good as the person who wields them, right? And that's it's going to look different in 5 years. What got us here will not get us there, right? And yeah, Lynn, you've said it a few times. One size is not fitting all. And what's good for the advice for one individual, if I ask somebody online, hey, how do I make true, authentic Italian tiramisu? I'm going to get a few different answers, but for the majority of it, it's going to be ladyfingers, espresso, mascarpone, cheese, and eggs, and cocoa. If I ask somebody, hey, what should I do to insure my business? What kind of business do you have? But not many people ask about those things online. They just say, oh, you should have liability. You should have property. You should have workers' compensation. That can send anybody into the analysis paralysis tailspin and just water down the whole complexity and go, I just need the simplest solution. That was way too much. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And then also, like, as far as differences, you can go back one still. I was going to just, no, forward. Sorry. The one size fits all. So I just wanted to make a note here too, that once you put a policy in place, doesn't mean you're all set and you're good to go for the year too. Anytime there are changes, you want to get with your agent and talk about that, because these things can complicate your policy and your coverage. So if you move, you hire new employees. I'm trying to think of other situations, but you just need to make
adding
sure
a car.
Yeah, exactly.
Something simple as adding a car.
Auto policy. If your employees are using their cars for business to drive around in. Different things like that we need to know. And there's certain things, now you can go to the next slide,
Sure,
called
sure.
endorsements that you can put on policies. As
Yeah.
Scott mentioned earlier, you look at a policy and it's so many pages and your eyes are blurring out after 2, 3, 4, if you're lucky. And really what you're looking at originally is your liability, maybe building coverage, some business personal property, things that are in your building that you want to cover. There's even things that go between buildings, say a contractor, we call commercial inland marine. You need coverage for that. But that's when it's important to talk and not be afraid to ask the questions. I ask questions to Scott all the time, as I'm doing today. So you want to, it's not an embarrassing thing. There's a lot of jargon in there. Sam's a lawyer. You probably understand it more than all of us. But you want to push back and ask questions because you have your coverages. And then specific to the business, you can have, there's certain limitations on that coverage that you can add endorsements on to increase that coverage or create coverages that aren't in the policy. So that's when the tailoring is important. And the conversation back and forth is because you do need to understand your policy. You can't just stick it in a drawer and say I'm insured and check the box. That's all I needed to do. You want to make sure, and I've mentioned before, the risk management. You want to make sure you're managing your risks. And to do that, talk to the agent. There's things you can put in place, employee handbooks, procedures to follow. If there's a claim, what do we do? Have that plan ahead of time. And so I'm kind of getting off topic of this, but as far as understanding, don't be intimidated by the language, I guess. Just break it down. If something looks bizarre, you don't understand it, talk to the agent.
Yeah, that's you mentioned Sam's an attorney, and third graders don't write contracts for insurance. Attorneys do. Actually, they're called scriveners. But Sam, here's a call out for you. What are the what's the one difference between these two paragraphs? There's only one. If you can point it out, this is a small on-the-spot test for you.
All right, guys. I'm gonna get code calls outside of the law school. You guys, okay. All right. Let me look at them.
Sure. It's for me. This is the a fun part for insurance. I like to read these things over and over and over again till they become blurry. But this reminds me of the highlights magazine at the dentist's office. The seek and find. What's the difference between these two photos?
I can see you have performed operations. That's for number one. And number two is whom you are performing operations.
Correct. Gold star. You win the lottery. It's a round of applause. But thank you. This is a contractor specific form for additional insureds, and it extends coverage if you're a contractor. So if you're a contractor, or know a contractor or work with contractors and familiar with this kind of concept, please just show a hand or give a reaction. If I'm a contractor who gets a job who is contracted to do a job for someone else, perhaps a general contractor, that upward stream party, that building owner, they would like to be added to my policy as an additional insured, because if I screw something up and cause harm, bodily injury, property damage, this is the liability part, they don't want to use their insurance policy, they want to use mine. And for me, the contractor, I need to have both of these endorsements on here so that while I'm doing the job and after I've completed the job, that person that I've contracted with still has coverage for my mistakes, my damage. What does this look like in real life? Snowplow contractors. If you are plowing the sidewalks or shoveling and removing ice from sidewalks and plowing streets and roadways and driveways and parking lots, if you run into the building, you slip, you don't brake well enough, you run into the building, that's property damage while you're there. And that's actually a business auto exposure, but slightly different. But let's assume that after I leave, it refreezes because I didn't use enough salt. Which of these endorsements is going to protect the building owner from that loss? So there's quite a bit of things to unpack. And when the words are as different as 2 or 3 in the exact same paragraph and they're not automatically included on a policy, that's the cause for concern that we like to raise with all of our contractors, and for the building owners, and for the who has the contract with the snow removal company is an interesting one. If you're the tenant and you have a contract with your building owner, who's responsible for it? Who pays the bill? Are you on a triple net lease? Because if I walk into Kroger, the grocery store, and I slip and fall outside, odds are I'm probably going to speak with my attorney and say, I slipped and fell coming into Kroger. Kroger is going to get that lawsuit and say, no, we don't, we have, our contract says that the building owner of the entire strip, 150,000 square feet, that's who you need to talk to because we're not responsible for that. And the building owner then says, well, actually, you need to sue the snow removal company because that's who we contracted with. And that is a round and round and roundabout way to get really frustrated, especially if you're the contractor, you're the tenant, you're the building owner. What role do you have and how stressful is it? And who are you calling when you get those things? I think we had a question come in. Question for speaker. If my business changes, what should I be telling my company? When should I talk? Before the business changes or after? Lynn, that's right. That's all you.
Before, absolutely before the business changes. In the planning stages, when you know changes are coming, as much notice as you can give your insurance company, the better, because then you have an opportunity to be proactive, have that conversation, talk about it, and they can help you decide what type of coverage you need rather than this change happened, by the way, I need this. And then when things get hurried, that's where accidents and mistakes are made. I had a new insured that just bought a gas station, bought it and purchased everything. And he said I'm called and said, I'm closing tomorrow. That's not a situation you want to be in with your insurance agent. It's a lot of pressure, and mistakes will happen because you're not going to get everything, all the information you need in that scenario. So the more time, the better for sure. And, that gives an opportunity to also educate, just like Scott's doing here, have those conversations about the small things, the language, and overall just make sure that all your bases are covered and not just, oops, I need to have this done. So it's definitely important.
Yeah, the insurance is one of the three legs of a stool for a business. Insurance and risk management, tax and accounting, and legal, right? Those are, if you don't have a great relationship with your agent, please go develop one with them. And if you don't feel like that's going to be a relationship that serves you well, by all means, you're able to go find someone that you can have that relationship with because that's ultimately the most important. And we put on here, all agents are not the same. And that's correct. There are agents that specialize in certain fields. There are agents that specialize in healthcare insurance, the agents that specialize in workers' compensation, transportation, restaurants. So taking the time to find out who is the expert in your area, who's the one that you feel confident to go to, and that often starts with talking to your business owners that you're in the same industry with. Who do they work with, and what has their experience been like? Not how much do you pay for the policy, but what do you talk about with your agent? What does that look like? And the larger the business, the longer it takes to be able to set those kind of things up, and it really truly is worth the time and energy.
I agree. And just touching on that, when things happen as well, if you have a relationship with your agent and it's very transparent, very trusting, if something happens to your business, you feel more comfortable reaching out to that agent, and that agent will be an advocate for you, absolute resource, because that's, when things happen and you get in trouble, that's when you really need your agent. Aside from setting it up, that is another critical moment where it's important to have that be able to have that conversation with someone and know who your agent is. I had a new insured join me. He's a young contractor and he needed a workers' compensation policy. He's doing windows for wall side windows. And he said, if I sign up with you, will you help me with my audits? And I said, absolutely. And he mentioned that someone told him his agent refused to discuss that with him. So I've had people in my office on the phone with their payroll person and assisting. It's just, what are your needs? And like Scott said, we're here to help, and we want to assess and know everything about you, just so we can be that resource that's valuable for you.
We also have another questions coming in from Sam. Any other business change examples that are substantial changes that the insured should know or share with their agents in advance?
Yeah, actually, Lynn, you and I were talking last or yesterday about the non-emergency medical transportation risk. And this, we were talking about it because this, Lynn, I'll let you talk about more about yours because they're your client. But I had a client that had a few physical therapy locations sprinkled throughout Michigan, and they bought a vehicle and they called and said, I need to add this to my policy. Okay, we don't have a business auto policy. What are you doing with it? Well, I'm going to be picking up patients and taking them to and from their homes to the office so that they can get the treatment that they need. Oh, okay. That is a colossal change in business exposure, and that coverage doesn't just appear. And Lynn, we were talking, you have the size and scope of what you were talking about yesterday, without divulging, too much of the information about the client, right? Pretty much the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, it was in the home health industry, and they assumed that on their policy there was something called hired and non-owned auto, where they have an employee that's driving around with their clients to doctor's appointments, to stores. And she said, make sure that I'm covered and the client's covered in the vehicle under your insurance policy. They weren't. We did not have that coverage. That would be a special coverage. That would be like a medical transport or livery coverage. But assuming things like that can be critical. But also, when you're hiring new employees, expanding operations, adding services. I had a gentleman that he has a siding business, and we just did a review, and he said, I don't even do siding anymore. It was an afterthought of a conversation. I really kind of just shifted to decks, and I really want to get inside and do more carpentry in the house. Now that changes the classification of the business he's doing, which also can change your premium and different things. So anytime you make any kind of change, and you're thinking it through in your head, that's when to have a conversation with your agent. And
Yeah, the great what if. What if I do this? What if I do this? Just like you would ask for your tax accountant. What if I make another $50,000 a year? How would that impact me? And not all changes result in price increases. Lynn said price change doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. If your exposure changes, yeah, your premium based on how insurance is rated absolutely might change, but so might the availability of coverage. If you're doing something additional that we didn't know about, you might not have that coverage now, when if we knew about it before, the policy would automatically be structured that way to provide that. Snowplow operations is a great example for the lawn care risk that says, I'm going to buy a plow and put it on the front of my truck, and I'm going to plow some driveways.
And I want to add in, I know this is maybe a little off topic with this, but back to Scott and I had talked the other day, and I just didn't know quite where to insert it. But if you're a tenant and you have a business, or, even if you own your building, but more so a tenant, do you understand your lease contract? That is very important. You should be showing that to your insurance agent so that they and you understand what you're responsible for. Not everyone is the same. You could be responsible for an air conditioner unit on the roof of the building. You could be responsible for maybe just the glass, any build outs you do. Can you think of any other areas with that, Scott, that are important?
Those are the big ones. The common lease provision for the HVAC unit, like you mentioned, says tenants shall be responsible for all repairs and maintenance of the units, regardless of fault. So that means even a lightning storm that throws out the power down the road, the transformer goes, the surge blows out the AC unit up top or the heating unit. All of a sudden, that's a $50,000 out-of-pocket expense potentially for the tenant who didn't know otherwise because they felt that, well, if I'm the one that damages it, I'm responsible for it. And that's something that we can all accept. If I'm responsible, I take ownership of my actions. But the for any and all reasons that can get slipped into leases sometimes is pretty darning when something bad happens. It's a tough time to have to learn that. You mentioned also, Lynn, the building glass and build outs. It's called tenants improvements and betterments, right? So who did it though? Many times, if you're signing a lease, the landlord is incentivized to make your space awesome for you. You can negotiate some build out expenses that they pay for, some that you pay for. Ultimately, whose responsibility is it to ensure those items? And did they become part of the building? Are they movable? Is it temporary? Those are all considerations that go into the policy language, not by default, but by the collaboration. There was another question that came in. Supplier from China transporting supplies from Vietnam. Is this something I need to talk to my agent about? Yes. Here's why. What does the contract say with the supplier? Where does that lawsuit, if there is one, where does it say it's going to happen? If you have relationships in China, and if so, you're a business in the US, you have relationships in China, and all of a sudden you expand those operations to Vietnam. If you don't have those relationships and you're not used to that legal system there, where's that lawsuit going to be brought? The small macro example or micro example for Michigan is if you're domiciled in the state of Michigan, but you have a contractual relationship with someone in Kentucky, let's say Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's a great restaurant. Where will that lawsuit be brought if you are in advertising dispute? Does your franchise agreement state that you have to attend all those hearings in Kentucky? And if that lawsuit is happening in Vietnam as opposed to China, what's the legal and juridical environment look like in those areas? And what impact does that have on your ability to do business, especially if there's arbitration clauses or things like that? And the insurance policy not all insurance companies want to accept those risks and the duty to defend if we've got to travel outside of the country to do so, or specific countries in this case. Does that answer the question?
Did that answer the question, Duke? Thumbs up? Perfect. Awesome. And this is a question for myself. I know that the cost is not everything. We understand that. However, at the end of the day, it's also the business owners are watching out for their bottom lines, and they want to know, like, what can they do to control or reduce those costs? Like, how do they determine the right level of liability they need to get and all that, you know?
I can start with that one. Back to the risk management, controlling your claims. Claims can increase costs on premiums. When you're dealing with an insurance company, you hear the word loss history. We need to know your loss history. They want to see what kind of business owner are you? What kind of risk are you? If you're someone that manages your business properly and you have procedures in place and policies and employee handbooks and things like that to minimize the risk of litigation and other things, your premium is going to be less. You get paid for that, basically. It's also, based on payroll, the building age, but the ways to reduce costs, you can bundle policies. We actually have discounts. I mentioned I do personal lines. We have discounts that extend to the personal side if you do your home and auto. you get a discount on your business side and vice versa. So taking advantage of the holistic approach, we reward you for keeping all of your business with us. So that's kind of like a multi-policy discount. Check your classification codes, as Scott mentioned, regularly. That can change the pricing of your policy. Deductibles is a tool you can use to control costs. Certain policies have standard deductibles. If you raise those, if you're willing to take on more risk yourself, the premium price goes down for that. So you kind of have to find the balance of where it's cost effective and where that makes sense for you. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, the human capital component. When I was in the agency, my agency, I focused on artisan contractors. If you couldn't tell by the snowplow and lawn care examples coming up over and over again, the biggest question I ever got up front was not about the property and casualty. It's what can you do to help me save money on my workers' compensation? And if there's a claim frequency there, because believe who thinks I try to get the engagement in, but this question, what do you think is more dangerous, working in driving around in a vehicle or working at a subway? And not a train station subway, a subway restaurant. The cuts from meat slicers are more frequent and often more severe than injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Now, granted, an automobile accident can go from very small to very big in a very short period of time, but degloving, losing fingers, those are significant. And having the right loss control systems in place and identifying those, especially if you've been working in an industry and then go start your own business, you're going from knowing how to do the job. How do you know how to do the job? How do you know how to help other people do the job? And it's a difficult pivot for many folks. It's there's no easy way of going about it. And working, and this is the plug for Farm Bureau, because we don't want to destroy any relationship that anybody has with their agent. But something that Farm Bureau does and many other carriers do offer as well is you have access to our loss control department or risk management department. They're called different things by different carriers, but we have individuals that will come alongside you and spend a whole day with you, walking with you from the time you open the doors and turn on the lights to the time you leave and get in the car to go home, every single aspect of your operation to identify hazards that you might not have known existed. Cut resistant gloves for the meat slicer is a great thing. Lockout tagout for manufacturers. Photocell light barriers for manufacturers to stop machinery. There's a ton of different things that you can do, but it's going to be dependent on your business. But the culture of safety that your business has is going to have a direct impact on your pricing for workers' compensation. And that is something that when you're talking about the human element of your business, I don't think that it's anything that any business can afford to overlook, ignore, or shove off, say, I'll get to that later. Because without the people that you have, who's going to keep your business running?
I agree.
Awesome.
And then even, on that note, you should always, keep your receipts, inventory lists, keep your serial numbers organized, maintain updated photos of equipment in your property. If something happens, you may not even remember, say a fire occurs, what it looked like before at hand because you're so traumatized. So you want to be able to just keep everything organized, and that will help as well. So
that's fantastic
which
point.
brings us
That's
to
really
the
good.
conclusion. As we come to the end of the webinar, I just want to leave everyone with this thought. When you're taking control of your insurance isn't about having a policy in place necessarily. It's about engaging with your advisor and making informed choices. So think of it like this. You're the captain of your own ship, and the insurance is part of the navigation system. So when you take the wheel, you're not reacting to the storms. You're prepared for what comes your way, and you can navigate with our help. So I invite anyone to reach out if you would like to do a policy review, and I'd be happy to help make sure you're properly protected for your business.
hopefully there's a lot of questions that we can answer.
Yes, I've noticed we have business owners, entrepreneurs from different industries here. I think this is a great opportunity for you to ask any industry specific questions or any questions about your business. If you have arrived at the terms that you need to renew, please feel free to share or ask.
I
Of
know
course.
I have a question. You two did a fabulous job of overviewing some things I think I personally had never thought of. And I'm wondering, when you think about business owners, are there common coverage gaps that you typically see outside of some of the things you mentioned? And how can all of us avoid them to the best of our abilities outside of maybe updating you on our business changes, which you mentioned, and just things that we don't commonly think about?
Could
I have an
you?
answer for one of them. One of the things would be liability. People don't necessarily dive deep into that, but you see the numbers on the policy. Really, what you want to do is make sure that your net worth is covered and the value of the business is covered in these liability limits. There's something we can attach called commercial umbrellas that can increase that liability, because if something happens, that's definitely an area where people aren't necessarily thinking about that. So I'll have to bring that up. I see that. The employee liability practices coverage may not always be in there. We talked about if for employee harassment, if someone sues you or you fire them and they're not happy about it, things like that. And there was one other one, the business income. That's a big one too. Scott, you were going to say something?
Yeah, Laura, thanks for the questions. Fantastic. There's the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, what industry are you thinking of, if there is one in mind? Because just kind of like every automobile manufacturer has different things that they're affected by. If they focus on EVs, or if they focus on pickup trucks, or if they focus on small sedans, those manufacturing facilities are going to have unique, different needs, right? So broad brush, I think Lynn said the greatest one of all is the employment practices. Even a frivolous lawsuit where it's a disgruntled employee who feels that they weren't treated fairly. Maybe they felt they deserved another shot at keeping their job. Maybe they were let go because of they thought they were let go because they had purple hair that day. Employment practices, I think we put this on the coverage slide before. Yeah, don't assume coverage means what the coverage title says. That's where my brain went to, because employment practices liability doesn't just cover the employer from things that happen in the course of employment of their people. It actually is a third party coverage as well, meaning what happens if a guest at your hotel needs use of the ADA compliant room. Well, if a room isn't available, a room isn't available. But if the height of the bars, if the requirements for that accessible room are not present, and that individual suffers a loss, or they feel discriminated against for that, they can actually file a lawsuit against the business for that discrimination. Lynn brought it up, the bakery that refused to make a cake or a wedding favors for a same-sex marriage couple. That is what most of us, I think, would consider to be a blatant form of discrimination, but that's a coverageable on the policy. Same with age, race, gender discrimination. That's a big one. That's really a hot topic, I think, in a lot of industries right now, identifying, right? And the political landscape of certain countries, including our own, can often make these come out a little bit differently in the news. But at the end of the day, there are some very real issues that employers are facing in terms of what is discrimination real or perceived. And of course, in the legal environment, it's who's got the duty to prove, or where's the burden of proof. but the insurance company has the duty to defend when that coverage exists on the policy, and it is not automatically included. And so if you have employees, or even if you don't, the business owner can be held responsible for things said in a private conversation between somebody else on the phone that somebody else overhears and feels like, was that directed at me? Those, I say frivolous claims because, well, maybe it was a private conversation. I don't want somebody coming to me, but I also need to be aware. I don't want somebody coming after me because they perceived me to be discriminatory or harassment or harassing or rude or disrespectful. But it is up to me to maintain that level of professionalism and knowing that somebody is always watching, somebody's always listening in today's age. I have a feeling that Alexa is going to ask me, if I'd like to buy some manufacturing equipment because I talked about it and I'm sitting at home today. And I'll have things on my Facebook feed or LinkedIn feed, probably with all the folks that are here on this call. Hey, do you know this person? Because you interacted with them for 45 minutes. Somebody is always paying attention. And I think that we're living in an era where we have to be cognizant to protect ourselves from ourselves sometimes too. Just being who we are, our authentic selves, isn't always the best thing for others. Does that make sense?
It does. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I had on my mind.
You reminded me too, Scott, about cybersecurity liability or protection from that as well. When you said always listening, or just, cyber coverage on policies, that is something that people aren't necessarily looking at either, that we provide. If somebody steals your identity or, hacks into your system, we provide coverage that helps attorneys' fees, different things to help right your situation.
Yeah.
So that's an important coverage as well.
Yep, those legal defense costs are huge. We talked about contracts, and something that is that's been a little bit more of a hot topic recently, and I'm not sure what the reason is, but pollution coverage. If you own a building, let's say an apartment complex, or any large structure, or a restaurant, great example, manufacturing facilities, if you get rid of waste, what happens to it? What does your contract look like with the trash collection dumpster company? What does your contract look like with the grease reclamation company? If you're a contractor, if you're an excavator, if you're a plumber or an HVAC technician, what happens if you miscalculate and incorrectly program the humidistat in a senior living center, for example? How many I can't think of the word vulnerable adults, right? With respiratory issues. If there's even the smallest amount of mold or fungus that grows in a moist, damp, dark environment, all of a sudden you could have individuals getting sick, and that's a pollution exposure. And that's not going to be covered under the typical contractor policy. If you're moving earth as an excavation or site prep contractor, if the earth is contaminated and all you're doing is moving it, but you had nothing to do with knowing, you can actually still be brought in on the lawsuit for exacerbating a pollution event. And so there's every industry is going to have its unique components of, well, what can we do to protect ourselves from this? And at the end of the day, this was my mentor that told me this. He said, Hedman, we will always have more insurance to sell than people have the capacity to purchase. There has to be some type of risk management involved for you and the client, the insured, to be able to come to agreement and say, okay, this is our risk appetite, because some things are actually uninsurable. Not many these days, but you have to pick and choose what is going to pose the biggest risk to your business and take those steps to be proactive from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lynn and Scott, for sharing your insights. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. I hope everybody joining us today walk away with more clarity and fewer surprises in your coverage decisions. And as you can see, Lynn is sharing her contact details. Or if you are considering renewing or any other questions, please feel free to reach out. I hope all of you have a wonderful day, and I hope that we'll get to see you at our next APAC program. As you can see, our next Small Business Action Committee events will be on Thursday, January 22nd from 6 to 8 at Bamboo Royal Oak for the Luna New Year networking. And another one, our signature events, East West Business Connections on Wednesday, March 4th between 9:30 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. at Wayne State University. So stay tuned for those and hope to see you guys there. Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful day.